Hello! Welcome to Mr. Snail's Wild Ride. I am Mr. Snail, and the wild ride is my life so far. A part of my ongoing struggle as an autistic person to understand and to be understood by the neurotypical world around me is the difference and difficulty that I have with problem-solving strategies. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. A few people have commented on some of my discussions about mattering and legacy and public fulfillment and my own personal struggles with these issues, and saying things like, everybody goes through these things and that's all part of what midlife crisis is about. And that's totally true for most people. But there's a significant difference for me and for many people on the autism spectrum, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. What it really boils down to is a wiring comparison between neurotypical problem-solving approaches and people with Asperger's syndrome and their methods of problem-solving. And there's a fairly simple analogy that can be used to compare these two things. For neurotypical people, the way they solve problems is inefficient but very facile. Think of an ATV getting from point A to point B, but it's off-road. There's no particular path outlined, and there's obstacles, but in an ATV you can go around whatever obstacles present themselves, whether they see them up close or they sort of crop up at the last minute. They get there eventually, it's no big deal, whatever. Now for people on the spectrum, it's always the most efficient way possible. It's like a bullet train. It's a straight line, one track, one option, but it's very easily derailed. And once it's derailed, you need all sorts of support crews to get things back on track. You need an ambulance, you need medical and fire and police and repair crews and mechanics and engineers. It's a whole rigmarole to get things back on track. If expectations or assumptions about how the procedure is going to go are not met, I am almost immediately overwhelmed. I am very easily derailed. If you see videos of autistic children throwing these ridiculous temper tantrums, that's a classic example of assumptions or expectations not being met. Even teens and adults, they freak out or they shut down. It appears at face value to be just very immature behavior. But this is life on the spectrum. It's nothing to do with maturity. It's wiring. It's all about wiring. And if you're not diagnosed early enough, you have very limited tools and skills to cope with problem solving, or at least learning how to solve problems in a neurotypical way. Me personally, I don't usually freak out. And nowadays I shut down and just have to flee the scene. But I gotta tell you, through high school, through college, I punched holes through a lot of walls. I spiderwebbed a plate glass window when I was in college. I still have problems with the initial point of contact on this knuckle. And now, more than 20 years later, at least I had the forethought, if you will, to use my non-dominant hand to punch the window, if that can be even called forethought. So what's the deal? Why the train? Well, in Tony Attwood's The Complete Guide to Asperger's Syndrome, which is basically the definitive text, one adult explained to Dr. Attwood that when solving a problem, this individual assumed that his solution was correct and did not need to be changed. So his thoughts were, well, this is the right way to solve the problem. Why isn't it working? And when I read that, I immediately thought of my struggles in high school, specifically in calculus class my senior year and trigonometry my junior year. Math was always my forte. I've always loved math. In general, there was one right way to solve the problem. So I would go in and I would take a test and I would think that I did well and I'd come back with like a B- or a C or something like that. You know, this happened over and over. My father would say, well, why didn't you ask for help? And I would say, I thought I knew how to do it. It never occurred to me that I was wrong, that I didn't understand the procedure. So from the outside, it looks like we're not learning from our mistakes, or that we're lazy, or stubborn, or stupid. And that's not it. Another example comes from Dr. Stephen Shore, from his book, Beyond the Wall. He's another example very similar to Dr. Temple Grandin. He was diagnosed at an early age with very severe autism. He was nonverbal until the age of 4. People wanted to institutionalize him, thought he would never be functional, and now, of course, he's a professor at a university. So he described it this way. He said, without appropriate support, the child with Asperger's syndrome may feel like he is drowning in 1 million different subtasks. And that's the story of my life, too. The list of subtasks has just gotten longer as I've gotten older. And this plays actually right into my problems with time and time management, which is something I'm going to talk about more next week. The whole idea of 1 million subtasks sort of speaks to a larger issue that people on the spectrum have, which is discerning sort of a hierarchy of importance when it comes to things like stimuli or tasks, aside from their special interest. Basically, everything is sort of on the same plane of importance. So this list of subtasks all seem about the same in terms of importance. So how do I cope with this derailment when I get derailed? It's hard. It's really hard. My internal experience is sort of like a whiteout. It's sort of like a cardiac arrest. The beep, 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 and then it gets faster and faster, and then beep, and it's all over. And I just can't take it anymore. And I have no patience for anybody, and I get snippy, and I just got to get out of there. And I've been trying to learn, and it's taken a long time, to see the warning signs sooner so that I can get out before the whiteout happens. But I'm not always able. So I'm always trying different coping techniques for before the whiteout, for after the whiteout. The latest couple of things that I'm trying is I recently bought a heavy bag on Craigslist. When I blow my gasket, I go down into the basement and I beat on that thing with a baseball bat until I'm breathing so heavy that I'm going to have an asthma attack, and then I stop and walk it off, and sometimes that helps and sometimes not. I've also started seeing a hypnotherapist again. I saw a hypnotherapist for a few years when I lived in Chicago. That was very helpful. So just like life, it's sort of an ever-evolving exploration. I'm constantly discovering new things about myself and about life on the spectrum, and triggers and things I should avoid or things I can do differently to offset experiences. It's weird. So next week I'm going to talk about my love-hate relationship with time and how my being on the spectrum makes that so challenging. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. What it is all about, and different things that explain stuff. Well, that sucks. Word problems and explaining,